Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Grace Holland. As the uses for artificial intelligence grow, so does its dark side. People are using the new technology to create pornography, many times without the consent of the people in the pictures or the videos. And if that's not enough, the makers of this pornography are using it to extort their victims, often for money. This week, North Carolina lawmakers are hoping to outlaw these practices with a new law. WRAL's Eric Miller joins us to talk about this issue. Eric, thanks for being here.
So, Grace, thank you for having me.
So, do we have a sense of how common this type of sexual extortion is?
Well, the short answer to that is it's more and more common. This is something that in a lot of ways you couldn't even imagine 1 or 2 years ago. But now with really the proliferation of a lot of these online AI image generators, it's becoming something that more and more people are aware of, more and more people are doing, and that's becoming a problem for more and more people in more states.
Right. I feel like 10 years ago, we were just sort of starting to talk about maybe revenge porn. Someone sends someone a picture and then that person posts it on the internet without their consent or something like this. But this is a totally different situation from even that. In your story on Wednesday, you talked about a pretty crazy case of this in North Carolina. Can you walk us through it? Because I think it's a really good illustration of how extreme this can be.
Yeah, so this was a case that the federal government actually brought in the Western District of North Carolina last year. It was a first of its kind case for the Western District. They'd never had anything like this before. It goes back to a 41-year-old child psychologist named David Tatum. Tatum was ultimately convicted on a slew of child pornography charges. These were charges related to, in one case, he had filmed a 15-year-old relative of his. He also had more than 1,000 pieces of child pornography on his computer. But the thing that really stood out were some of those pieces of child porn. What he had actually done in some cases was taken photos of classmates of his, of girlfriends of his, from when he was in high school. Photos of people who were now, 40, 45 years old, who were at the time just 13, 14, or 15. He'd taken these photos, run them through AI image generating software, and produced child pornography of them without their knowledge or consent. In all of these cases, these women had no idea what was going on until the FBI showed up on their doorstep and started telling them about it. In one case, we haven't heard from these women directly. We do have victim impact statements that they submitted to the court. But in one case, a woman said she thought that this was a scam when the FBI agent showed up, and until they started pulling out these photos and showing them to her. She said, quote, "I can't describe the moment when they showed me my 15-year-old naked body." In another case, there was a woman who had a photo of her and friends standing around at a bus stop, smiling, having a good time. And this man took this photo and turned it into child pornography. I mean, she describes the feeling of disgust now when she thinks about this moment. So, I mean, it's really heart-wrenching stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I get chills hearing you talk about it because, I mean, disgust comes to mind. Horrifying is the word I think of. It's just a nightmare to think that something like this could happen. So in current North Carolina law, obviously the FBI was investigating this guy and found all of this, but what is on the books in North Carolina to do with a case like this?
So it's a little bit wishy-washy. This man in Charlotte was prosecuted by the federal government under existing child pornography statutes. But it's a case of it really helps prosecutors and helps police to have another tool in the toolbox and to have it explicitly stated that you can't do this and that this is illegal. So it really just kind of shores up a chink in the armor here.
Right. Okay. Well, let's take a quick break right there and we'll be right back. Eric, before the break, you were explaining some of the limitations of North Carolina law when it comes to dealing with this kind of AI sextortion. Who is behind? So tell us a little bit about who is behind this bill and what made them want to tackle this issue.
So the bill's lead sponsor was an Alamance County Republican senator, Senator Amy Galey. I spoke with her on Wednesday evening, and she told me she actually wasn't even aware of this Charlotte case as she was working on this bill. Instead, this was the result of concerns that were actually brought to her by a constituent. She didn't want to go into details on this case. It did involve a minor, and that's kind of all we can say about that. But I think that speaks to both the reach of these issues and to how frequently they're now starting to show up. That you had a case similar to this, a case like this that was popping up in a place like Alamance County, which is, of course, very rural.
Right, and this is an issue I know that's popping up nationwide. I think about some hearings before Congress that different social media executives had to go through, and there were a lot of questions about this issue. I know in South Carolina, they recently passed a bill on this because there's a state legislator there who lost his son because of a sextortion scam. So we're seeing this start to pick up steam around the country. How would this bill that Senator Galey has proposed work here in our state if it passes?
So it has passed both the House and the Senate at this point. So we'll be working its way towards the governor's desk at this point. And the bill does a number of things. In addition to outright and explicitly banning any AI-generated images of child pornography. It also makes it a crime to own, sell, or create a sex doll that looks like a minor. Again, a potential use of AI there. It also makes it a crime, it makes it a specific crime in North Carolina called sexual extortion. It would make it a crime to threaten to publish or to refuse to delete a nude photo of somebody in order to force that person to do something against their will. That, of course, applies whether that photo is real or is AI generated.
And so what do we think the outlook is on Governor Cooper signing this bill? I mean, given that it passed both houses, clearly there's a lot of support for this.
Yeah, there does seem to be a lot of support here. We'll have to watch and see what happens. But as you just said, this is an issue that is popping up in so many other places. A number of other states already have these sorts of laws on the books. So this is something that is likely to become law here in North Carolina.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Eric, for breaking all of this down. And thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email that's waiting in your inbox every morning with local news, events, and headlines to get you ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.